Today I'm speaking with Jason Follas. Jason, how are you?
Good, Dave.
Hey, I really enjoyed your talk on the World of Warcraft. You know, I've been at like 5 or 6 venues where you've given that talk. Tonight was the first time I actually got to hear it.
It's a fun talk to give because it's not your traditional talk. It's not down in the bowels of C# or anything like that. So it's very high level and it's very touching on a subject that a lot of people might be familiar with, but then again, a lot of people are not familiar with it. So they think to themselves, I'm at a technical event. What am I doing listening to a video game talked about? So
World of Warcraft is it's a video game with a massive multiplayer online role playing. Have you had all that video game?
Yeah. So it's an MMORPG. So MMO is how we shorten it, but it's basically modern day Dungeons and Dragons with a lot of other people, hundreds of other people playing alongside of you. It's in a virtual world that's immense. You can run and fly across this world and just go to different lands, and it's very fantasy based. So that's what an MMO is all about.
And you actually play this game. You're a fan.
I do. So the game itself, it costs money to play. So this isn't an ad for World of Warcraft, but just to let you know the investment that I have in this game. Right, so they suck you in with this $20. So that lets you start a character in level or progress his character to a level 60, and then in order to continue playing the game, you have to fork over $40 more for the first expansion, and that gives you 10 more levels. And then you fork over another $40 for the second expansion, that gives you another 10 levels. So now we're talking a level 80 character, and coming out on December 7th of 2010 is when their third expansion pack comes out. So that's another $40 that I'm going to fork out to give me another 5 levels to play. And all the meanwhile, besides buying the software, I'm also paying $15 a month, month after month after month, and I've been doing this for like 4 years now. So that's
there's you and there's 12 million other people that are doing the same.
Yeah, the latest numbers that Blizzard Entertainment just released said 12 million other people. So that's, you think about that. I write systems and applications that 5 people might use. They're writing it for 12 million people to use. And you think about not only the initial outlay of money that I described, but $15 a month roughly. And Blizzard is pulling in probably in the neighborhood of $100 million plus every month just in revenue. So I don't support systems that big. I don't write systems that big, but I thought it was interesting to kind of do a case study on World of Warcraft as an application and see what ideas I can steal into my own applications.
Right, that's the purpose of your talk. Let's look at this not as a game, but as an application.
Yeah,
how do they address the problems that we as developers?
So that's what I did. As a developer, I took a step back and said, what are they doing interesting to make people stick with their game as a platform versus any of the competitors out there?
What kind of lessons can we learn from World of Warcraft?
Well, I broke it down into, there's probably any number of lessons, but I broke it down into 4 or 5 high level. And I really came out with the strongest ones first in this talk. So the very strongest one was the user interface. So
can you list what they all are first, and then go back into detail later?
Sure, I can. So the user interface was my first point. The second point, I talked about extensibility, application extensibility. The third point, I touched on data, so some of the interesting things that they were doing with data. And the fourth point that I talked about tonight was the social aspect of the game.
Okay, so I'm sorry I interrupted, but the user interface.
Okay, yeah, so the user interface, well, WoW is a pretty graphical game, and WoW is short for World of Warcraft, so if I use that, that's what I'm referring to. So WoW is a very visual game. You're a character, you're in a 3-dimensional world, you can freely move the camera around and look at things and interact with things in the world. So on top of this 3-dimensional world, they also render information to the user in an upfront, heads-up display type of interface. So as you're playing the game, you have status information and world and data coming to you in a variety of ways, all rendered on up front and on top of the world. So I think that they might refer to that as a glass interface because it's like it's rendered on this glass that's sitting in front of your view of the world.
So all this information is available to you at any time. You don't have to click something to go to another screen to see what you're searching for, or a map of the area you're in, that sort of thing.
Right. So that is up front, and then as a user, you can drill into additional information that you might need, but that would be more tactical information rather than something that you would immediately need. For instance, you might open up a character screen during some idle time in order to swap out a pair of gloves or another set of gear to make your character do something or behave a little bit differently. So what I realized, and this derives from a LAN party that I went to. So a group of friends all converged onto one house, and everybody brought their computers, and we were playing the game together. And at some point, we thought it would be fun to every so often stand up and move one chair to the right, and then sit down at somebody else's keyboard at their computer, their user interface, and play the game on their character. So, and one thing I should mention is that even though you're given this rich user interface out of the box, the game allows you to the user to customize the user interface. So you can move things around, you can make things more transparent, resize them, things like that. So you can really tailor the user interface to your own liking. So when we were playing this round robin game at this LAN party, I realized after playing on everybody's own user interface that wasn't my own, that it can be really confusing. So people can make their own user interfaces that work very well for them, but not necessarily somebody else. But that doesn't detract from the fact that the interface is perfect for them. So that was my real epiphany that we're here in the Detroit area. Automotive's big. One thing about automotive is that when they design their user experience for the inside of the car, they have to get it right the first time, because as a car owner, I'm not able to take my steering wheel and put it on the passenger side of the car and start driving British style or something like that. I'm stuck with whatever the car manufacturer gave me for the most part. But in the software world, if we were to do that and not allow the user to customize, that's kind of like having a house with all the furniture nailed to the floor. So it might be good for the first impression or the first time you do it, but then eventually you might want to rearrange the furniture in your living room. And if it's nailed to the floor, you can't do that easily. So in the software world, and this is the real takeaway that I've been talking about this whole time, in the software world, the ability for the user to modify a user interface is more important than getting it absolutely perfect out the door. Because as I saw with that exercise of moving to the next computer and seeing somebody else's interface, their interface wasn't perfect. It wasn't perfect for me. It probably wouldn't be perfect for a new player coming into the game, but it was absolutely perfect for that person that's using it. And if they didn't like something, they were free to tweak it even further. So that's the big takeaway from the user interface portion of my talk.
Yeah, a good lesson for our software as well. UIs, I think, are sometimes overlooked, almost trivialized in application development, application architecture, and they are important because they're the first glimpse that the user has into the application. In fact, the only glimpse sometimes.
And if we're talking about adherence to a platform, so if you're writing software, especially software for profit, you want to build up a user base. You want them to be married to your platform so they don't go away and start using your competitors' software. And you want them to, by word of mouth, attract other people to your platform as well. So anything that you can do to encourage adherence of your audience is very important.
Yeah. So let's talk about accessibility.
So extensibility. So my definition of extensibility, at least, is being able to add functionality to software without recompiling that software. I don't know if you agree with that definition or not.
I agree with it, and I'm going to rephrase it. And you tell me if this is a good rephrasing. It's the ability to empower your users to extend the software, because they don't have the power to recompile your applications. So you're putting that power in their hands.
That's right. I mean, that would narrow it down to my talk's definition of it, or how I expanded on it in my talk, because we're all about empowering the users to do things. So in this case, the World of Warcraft allows users to easily almost script out commands. So you can have your character do multiple things by creating these macros, and then a macro can be bound to a button in the game, so that all I have to do as a player is click one button over and over again, and then maybe my character does 4 or 5 different things repeatedly. So that's the lowest level of automation or a way of extending the game. But beyond that, World of Warcraft supports this rich add-on functionality where I, as a developer, can create user interface components or create functionality that the game performs, and I do so using a rich programming language, a scripting language actually called Lua in the World of Warcraft. So in my talk, I went into, well, in the .NET world, we can do things like provide scripting support to our application by using the dynamic language runtime, and that way I expose an API that the dynamic language runtime also has access to through the script scope. And then at runtime, a script, a text file, basically can be loaded from the hard drive and execute. And I showed in my demo the ability to do event handling using Ruby code. That way, the Ruby code was providing validation of a text box, but that validation was completely runtime experience. It wasn't compiled into my software. The other side of that, besides the dynamic language runtime, I also touched on MEF, which I know is a topic near and dear to your heart.
I'll talk about it a lot.
So MEF is more of a compiled experience.
MEF stands for?
The Managed Extensibility Framework. So MEF is a compiled experience where instead of scripting, where it's just a text file, I'm actually writing code that plugs into another architecture, and then MEF has this whole concept of imports and exports. That's I'm offering something for somebody else to consume, or I'm expecting something that was exported by somebody else that I need to consume. And then MEF also provides runtime discovery of plugins or these imports and exports, and also the dynamic wiring up, where basically you just say MEF, here's a bunch of imports, exports, fit them together where they make sense. Yeah. So that's MEF in a nutshell. And I showed the same text box validation software where I wrote a plugin that did the validation. Again, I didn't have to recompile my main application in order to provide that. I just had to drop this plugin assembly into a place where it could be discovered.
Sure, those aren't the only ways of extending .NET applications. There's a lot of proprietary systems built in, writing reflection code and so on. But I think the key takeaway here is that your applications are better if you make them extensible.
Right.
I said empowering users, but I guess empowering third parties as well.
Yeah.
So, is a great thing.
So I could have done a whole talk on just extensibility alone,
right.
From everything from let's face it, the ADO.NET or the ASP.NET membership provider is one way of providing extensibility.
All the provider models, yeah.
So anything that allows you to do declarative type of programming can be considered extensibility as well. But I just touched on DLR and MEF because those are closest to what World of Warcraft offers.
Yeah. Okay. What about data? There's a lot of data in World of Warcraft.
Right. So
somebody told me there's data in business applications as well.
Yeah. So the world lives on data, let's face it. So the World of Warcraft also has data in the background. Everything that you're looking at, everything that you do results in data, usually sent across the wire. So the data, I covered a couple different points, but one point was as software optimization, caching is a 20% effort way to get 80% return on overall performance. So in this aspect, World of Warcraft will cache data that doesn't change that often, so that it's not making constant calls back to the server just to know information about a monster that you see in the game or another character. So the same type of concept can be used in your own applications. Besides that, I said that it's a good idea to log everything. So World of Warcraft does this. It generates a log for every action that you do and every action that is done to you, and also when you're playing with other people, it's every action that those other people are doing around you. And then where this proved to be useful for the World of Warcraft was in third-party processing. So I could take a log file after a night of playing the World of Warcraft, upload it to this third-party website. It would parse every line. So this log file could be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lines long. It will parse every line and mine the data out of it so that I can see how I as a character performed in relation to other characters that I was playing with. So Not functionality that's provided out of the game. It's something that the game empowered or enabled through the logging of everything. And there was the other thing they touched on was exposing your data publicly, if it makes sense and if it's not proprietary. So in the World of Warcraft, all the character data and all the item data and things like that are published publicly through a web service, so that if I'm interested in knowing about your character, for instance, I can go look you up through this website. The website's driven by a web service in the background, so I can also write an application to mine that data by going and querying it, getting XML back, and then parsing the XML. And then this spawned a whole breed of websites out there, third-party websites that will do things like I can log in and give my character information, and they can tell me what gear would be best for my character to wear in order to perform at its optimal performance.
Data mining in WoW.
Yep. So
the last thing was the social networking aspect of World of Warcraft.
right. So it's all about adherence to the platform, and what better way to get people stuck on your platform but to get them to play and interact with other people that way, even though they're sitting at home, usually alone, staring at a computer screen.
Now you're just depressing me.
Leading their sad life. They're really interacting with other people who are also sitting at home, staring
Honest
at a
man,
computer
he's
screen.
just interacting with his
So
friends.
it's plugged into the matrix. That's what the social aspect is. So socially within WoW, that branches out into a number of topics. Some that come to mind are using chat. So the World of Warcraft has a chat system and multi-channel, so I can chat one-on-one with somebody, or I can chat with people I don't really know who are standing next to me in the game, or I can chat with my extended family, which is called a guild, privately, so that only guild people can see our conversation. So chat, in a line of business application, chat's normally frowned upon, but that would be a low bandwidth way to add a rich collaborative experience into a line of business application, to be able to talk with other people who are also using the application. Things that we might use Instant Messenger today for, but building this into the application might prove useful. You ask somebody, how do I, or what status code should I be using for this, and somebody can respond to you because they're also in the game or in the application.
Sure, yeah, I think we're seeing that a lot now. Actually, Office Communications Server from Microsoft is a product that we're seeing a lot of traction on at my company, because it's not just a chat program. It integrates with a lot of the other applications, like your calendar, like your it'll detect your online status, for example.
Yeah, so WoW also has a presence awareness. So when any of my friends come online, I see that they come online, and not only characters in the game, but it also has this newer concept called a Real ID, where Blizzard Entertainment owns a couple properties. They own the World of Warcraft, and they also own something popular called StarCraft 2. Both of these are games that the common infrastructure called BattleNet. So as a user, I log into BattleNet and then I start playing my game of choice. But a Real ID, for instance, I can add Dustin Campbell as a Real ID friend, and even if he's playing StarCraft, I can see his online presence and I can chat with him, even though I'm playing World of Warcraft. So Blizzard allows the social aspect to span across all of their properties and not just the game of choice. So besides that, there's also location awareness. So in the World of Warcraft being a world, a three-dimensional world, location awareness is, where is something in relation to me and where do I have to go in order to go to that spot. But I thought it was interesting that, this is just an application and we're talking about data here. So to be in the same location as somebody else in the game really means that you're, to put it in line of business terms, you're on the same screen of a data entry application. So location awareness doesn't have to be where in the world are you. It can be where in an application is somebody else. Are they working in the same screen as me? Are they working on the same record that I'm editing? So that you can have awareness into what other people are doing.
Interesting.
And the last thing to touch on is just this pleasure center, this human reward center concept that they capitalize on. And that's making it, again, the whole concept of how do I get people stuck on my platform so that they don't go off to a competitor's platform. And WoW does this by giving you low-hanging fruit up front, so that as I'm starting to play the game, it might only take 10 minutes until I get my first level, and then maybe 15 minutes after that till I get my second level. So they give you really rapid rewards up front to get you hooked, and then it slows down over time. So the first hit's free, and then after that it's going to start costing you.
Well, presumably after time you'll have skill built up, and you'll be able to get the harder rewards more quickly.
Exactly. So they hit your reward center that way. Plus, they also do something interesting called achievements. So these aren't necessarily goals of the game per se, but they're little things that are kind of hard to do, but they're recognized. So one of them might be, after you make 25,000 gold, an achievement will pop up, and everybody around you and everybody in your guild sees that this character has just made $25,000 in gold or something. And another achievement type of, or how we can take this achievement type of concept and extend it to the line of business apps. This one's really stretching, but I thought of a data entry application where somebody is just entering data that they're receiving on paper into the system. Maybe by the time they enter a loan application, let's say you work for a loan company, by the time you enter a loan application for all 50 states, then you get this 50 state achievement. It's kind of like Foursquare, how you unlock different achievements along the ways. It means nothing to the person. It's just a little surprise, that's interesting. But it's a reward center. For that one brief moment, they'll be rewarded for doing data entry of their 50th state over all these thousands of things.
Jeff Atwood talks about the social aspects of the software he's running. He built Stack Overflow.
Okay.
And one of the points he made is that it's startling how much people will put into things, like getting a badge. Just a little badge. They got the idea, I think, from the Xbox. You do all this work, and what you do get your achievement is a little badge that you can show off on here.
Yeah.
And so he offers his system. He is growing in popularity in part because people can work to build up the question, the set of answers that are available, making it more appealing to new people, simply by, and their only reward is they get to put a little bling, a little flair up on their profile, which is a non-reward. There's no monetary value to that at all, but people do it. They get excited about that.
Exactly. So
it's social part of it.
It's a little thing. Nobody's really doing it in a live business application, primarily.
Well, I would argue that Stack Overflow is a live business application.
Well, I think of forms over data as a line of business application. So Stack Overflow, sure.
It is a business, and so I assume he's making money off of it. But I don't know.
But a little thing that you might be able to add into to your own applications, just to reward your users. It makes your application stand out above the competitors.
Yeah.
Excel that will tell you, or a spreadsheet program that will tell you when you've done your 1 millionth calculation.
Make your job suck less.
So that's really it in a nutshell. It was just it's a fun talk for me because I get to talk about WoW for an hour. And it's a different talk, and it's more of a case study on WoW as an application rather than just the game, even though I throw the game terms and concepts around constantly throughout. I don't harp on it like, here's how you play the game type of thing.
Right. I think you did a great job of not only drawing some lessons out of this, but also rationalizing the hours that you spent playing World of Warcraft. So, so as a reward, you want to promote anything that you're doing now, your blog or your online presence or any of the projects you're working on?
I really suck at self-promotion. So my blog's jasonfollas.com, Twitter's jfollas, and really that's it.
Jason, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed the talk.
No problem. Thanks. technology and friends, but
You will,
you know,
right now, but you didn't.
I just said it. Look,
Okay.
Dave of the future, you will see this. I said technology and friends.